Okay.
Very good morning, everybody. I'm Meher. I'm doing my master's degree in psychology, and today I'll be talking about attachment styles and psychiatry. Uh, so I'm actually doing a research on attachment styles. That's why I'm very passionate about this topic. So before we start, uh, I like to explain what the term attachment means. So in the book, you'll get a very definite, a definition like sit down.
Sit down.
So I
You are comfortable, son?
Yeah, so the term attachment in a layman language means the bond that we share with the people around us. So in psychology, the term attachment starts very early in life, that is when we're infants, and then it forms the basis of all our relationships as adults. So that is the crux of what attachment means. Attachment styles is the way we form an attachment, the way we behave. So we all have very different experiences in childhood, and that manifests very differently as adults. So the way we behave in relationships are very different, even though we are biologically made up the same way, but the way we behave, the way we show up, the way we feel is very different. It's because of our attachment style. So that's the basics of attachment styles. And lastly, I'll be talking about how to relate to psychiatry in terms of how attachment styles can actually help us predict certain disorders like personality disorders, anxiety, depression, even schizophrenia. So there are some interesting findings I'll talk about. And how attachment styles can act as a predictor of certain disorders, especially in childhood. So whenever for a holistic treatment of any patient, it can be beneficial to understand the attachment style, to understand how we can help them in family counseling and all of that. So I hope that is the overall crux of the entire presentation. If you have any doubts, please feel free to stop me. Okay, so yeah, attachment theory. First, we'll talk about the theory of attachment, which was given by two very famous theorists called John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. So they basically explain the concept of attachment and how significant it is in our ability to form and maintain relationships. John Bowlby introduced the idea of infant caregiver bond. So basically said that whenever an infant is born, whatever relationship it shares with the caregiver, here the caregiver could be a parent or not a parent, that depends. So whatever bond is formed between the caregiver and the infant, that forms the very basis of our attachment as well. So the relationship that we share at the very first year of our life plays a very important role, and it helps in the formation of working model of ourselves and others. Working model is nothing but how we feel about ourselves and others in a relationship. So for example, if I have my parents are very available to my needs, so I'll basically acquire a working model that I am worthy of love and attention. So even when I grow up, I'll be able to trust people better. I'll be able to feel like others are reliable. At the same time, so I form a very positive working model of me as well as the people around me. As contrast to that, if my childhood experiences were not that great, for example, my caregiver were inconsistent in meeting my needs, or they were there but like unpredictable, insensitive to my needs, I might acquire a working model that my needs are not valid or my needs are not worthy of being met. So I might be the problem. So then as adult also, it'll be difficult for me to trust other people, to trust myself. So I'll feel insecure in relationships. These are nothing but the child's first representation of the self, of others, and of the relationship. And these working models serve as a prototype of social functioning for future relationships. So whatever, how secure and how safe we feel in any relationship in our life depends upon the working model we require. It could be positive, it could be negative. I might have a positive working model of me, but a negative working model of the world. So I might feel I am very important, but the people around me are not that important. So that's the tendency developed from there. I might have a negative working model of myself, believing I am the problem, and a positive working model around me, which means that others are very nice. So I have to work hard. I have to be, do everything in a relationship to take it forward. This is what it means in the simple terms. So if you remember Eric Erickson's theory of psychosocial development, the first stage is trust versus mistrust. So during the first year of our existence, we are basically trying to understand if we can trust people around us. So basic needs like hunger, thirst, pain, if we show these needs by crying, by longing for our caregiver, So if our caregivers are able to respond to us, we are able to acquire the notion that they can be trusted. But if we're not able to do that, we acquire the notion that they cannot be trusted. So if caregivers are unavailable, inconsistent, unpredictable, insensitive, it could be because of many factors. Parents are usually unconscious of parenting. Very funny. Child's needs are not being met. They acquire the notion I cannot count on anyone. That leads to the child is not able to develop basic trust. While the negative was important, this belief system shapes the entire vision and they move forward in life with it. As opposed to this, if the caregivers are available, they acquire the notion that I can trust people. That leads to a basic trust and acquire a person working on it. That ultimately shapes their vision and they're able to be secure in relationships. Now, what are these needs that we talked about? From an evolutionary point of view, when we were hunter-gatherers, so our basic needs were nothing but I want to be fed, I want water, I want to be protected from animals, all of that. But now as we grow up, these needs change. These needs turn out to be I want to be loved, I want to be validated, I want to be attended to. Very interestingly, a psychologist, Nicole Pra, she mentioned that there are three basic human needs. We want to feel heard, we want to feel seen, and we want to feel considered. Considered is basically want to be accepted as who we are. So these needs are manifested in all our relationships, whether romantic, platonic, parental, all of this. So whatever needs you have, they come under the broad category of I want to feel seen and heard. But evolutionarily, we are born. If our basic needs are not being met by our parents, so we automatically understand that our needs, any needs, will not be worthy of being met. So from an evolutionary point of view, the attachment system that exists between the infant and the caregiver comes from the infant's need to survive and feel safe. Our brain has been wired to help us survive and not to make us happy, apparently. So even when we enter adult relationships, we are all trying to survive. We are all trying to survive based on the needs of how loved we feel, how attended we feel, how special we feel. And they turn to the primary caregiver and try to communicate discomfort and needs by crying, cleaning, etc. The way they responded to and attended to in times of distress shapes their trust in the caregiver. You might have heard your parents saying that if a toddler or if an infant is crying, you should just leave them crying and they'll stop crying themselves. That's actually very harmful. We study parenting styles and research indicates that we should not be doing that. So if you see people around you doing that, we should call them out because they get the message that I am not good. So, yeah, now attachment develops. The first is the pre-attachment phase, which is from birth to 6 weeks. Here, nothing is happening. The infant is just making use of some innate reflexes they have. They can only recognize the caregiver. They're trying to recognize the caregiver's voice, smell, etc., but they're not attached to anybody yet. Then attachment in the making phase, which is 6 weeks to 6 to 8 months. Here, the preference for one caregiver over another. So basically, they would react or respond more to one particular caregiver as opposed to different. For example, during this phase, infants would prefer their mother over their father, something like that. Then formation of reciprocal relationship, 18 months to 2 years and on. Infant can predict caregivers coming and going. Separation anxiety reduces. Negotiation and that is the fourth. Third is clear cut. 6, 8. Yeah, sorry. Third is clear cut. I forgot to put the arrows. Clear cut attachment phase, it is 6 to 8 months to 18 to here that attachment has been formed and attachment is evident, show separation anxiety and stranger. So here, because the attachment is in a very fragile form, so the infant feels very sensitive. So whenever even if they're separated for a few hours from the caregiver, they get very anxious. They would cry, they would not respond to any stranger and all of that. Last is the formation of a relationship where you understand that it's just not me, it's the other person also involved. So you understand that the parents are leaving home for a few times. So they negotiate with their parents saying that please pick me up from school, I'll go to school if you pick me up. And the parent tries to give explanations that I'll be going for work. The child is able to understand during this time. So while we're trying to counsel somebody, you always ask them how you were during these phases. So, for example, if they mention that I was not interested in my parents during the clear cut phase, so there's something wrong with the parenting, there's something wrong, something might be happening with the child and they're not able to attach. So these phases are important understanding the milestones of attachment that should have been there. Okay. Now, measuring the security of attachment, Mary Ainsworth gave a very special test called the strange situation test. So basically, based on an experiment, she devised 4 attachment styles. Up till now, we're discussing about what attachment is. Attachment styles are basically how we are in relationships. So a strange situation test takes the baby or an infant through 8 short episodes in which brief separations and unions with the caregiver parent occur. Observing infants' responses to these episodes, researchers identified a secure attachment pattern and 3 patterns of insecurity. So basically, there was a room and there was an infant and the caregiver was involved in the experiment. There was an observer and a stranger. Stranger is basically stranger, somebody who's a stranger to the infant was introduced. So the behavior was observed depending upon if the child is using parents as a secure base. Secure base is nothing. For example, if you must have noticed, little children, they might just go and explore and play around. They just keep on checking if the parent is there. So basically, they use their parent as secure base to no matter if I'm even not exploring, my parent will always be there. So they keep on checking back. That is secure base. So to see if when they're exploring, if they are counting on their parent, if they don't care if they're not there or not, this is the factor on which we can assess. Second was reaction to the unfamiliar adult. So normally people would be very children will get very reactive to a stranger. They would not want to play with them. But there are some children who are indifferent to strangers also. That also talks a lot about attachment. Separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is how much they cry, how much these factors. Is it understood? Now, based on
Here is it.
sorry, yes, but I'm not sure. Let's get back there. Okay, based upon the observed behaviors of the infants, there were 4 attachment styles which were given by Mary Ainsworth. The first is a secure attachment. Approximately 60 to 65% of infants come under this broad heading. They use parents and caregivers as a secure base. They prefer the parent over the stranger. They may or may not cry on separation, and on reunion, they actively seek contact and crying is reduced. The second is avoidant attachment. Around 15 to 20% infants fall under this category. They seem responsive to the parent caregiver when present. They react to the stranger in the same way as the parent. They're not distressed on separation. They're not clingy, so to greet the caregiver on reunion. Basically, they're indifferent to the stranger and the parent both. So it basically means that there must be some problem in the attachment in the making phase. So they're not able to recognize one caregiver over the other. Third is anxious ambivalent attachment. 10% people come under this. Before separation, seek contact with the parent and often fail to explore. Distress when parent caregiver leaves. On reunion, slow clinginess with anger. Cry a lot and difficult to comfort. This is an important point that on reunion, show clinginess with anger. So even though they were craving and they were longing for their parent, on reunion, they might react in hostile ways, which is their way of getting attention apparently. A lot of adults do this too, who are anxious in relationships. Last is disorganized, disoriented attachment. 15% people come under this. They reflect greatest insecurity. On reunion, infants show confused, contradictory behaviors. Reaction is mostly unpredictable and confusing. So infants who were not lying under any three of them, who are showing very contradictory results, would lie under disorganized and or disoriented attachment. How does adult attachment work in adult life? So whatever we've been talking about, we're talking about our infant needs and our relationship with the caregiver. But how is it manifesting itself in adult life? It's basically whatever attachment system we are making up. It depends upon attachment is nothing. Attachment is not a set of behaviors. It is a system that works. So the attachment system is basically depends upon these 3 to 4 points, which is proximity, maintenance, secure base, and safe haven. If you can relate to yourself, even our adults, we would like to maintain as much closeness to our partners as we can. We want our partners to be secure base, that we want to be trusted, and we want them to be reliable whenever we need them. And safe haven is whenever we feel distressed, we want our partners to be there to be there for us. So these three are basically nothing but, as infants also, we have the three things to be depend on, and even as adults. So we had same needs as infants, and why do we all behave and feel differently as adults? Because of attachment styles and because of the working models we have established as children. So we might all have the same experiences as infants, which was basically our parents are very unavailable and inconsistent in meeting our needs. But I might acquire the notion that it's because they are incapable and I'm important. You might acquire the notion that because I am not worthy and they are too important. So that is very subjective, and depending upon the working model we have established, we are able to be the way, depending upon that, we behave in relationships and feel differently in relationships. It's the same. So basically, the attachment styles I discussed previously, they were extended into adult attachment styles by Pathumlo. He gave the 4 goals, as I mentioned: proximity, maintenance. I love spending time with my partner, which was in childhood. I want to be as close to my caregiver as I want. Separation distress. I don't like it when I'm away from my partner. When in infants, you don't want to be separated from your caregiver. Third is secure base. I can always count on my partner when I need them. They will always be there while I work on my aspirations. So as infants, you would go explore, play around, believing that your parents will not leave you. Lastly, safe haven. I only need my partner when I'm distressed. Which basically means I need my partner first over everybody else. Again, as infants, you would want to, whenever you are crying or distressed, you seek your parents first. So these are the similarities between our attachment styles as adults and attachment styles as children. He proposed a new conceptual framework across 2 dimensions. I've been talking about this. Working models of self, which can be positive or negative. Positive could be I am worthy of love. Negative would be I am not worthy of love. Working models of others could be others are not reliable. Others are insensitive. Others cannot be trusted. Positive could be others are reliable. Others can be trusted, and they will be there when I need them. These are just an example of negative or positive working models. These are the expectations about how reliable the significant others will behave and how worthy and unworthy they are of care and support. So again, the 4 adult attachment styles are secure, anxious, dismissive, avoidant, fearful, avoidant. So if we have a positive working model of ourselves and the world, we'll have a secure base because we can trust others, because we feel that my needs are worthy and others are also worthy of love. If we have a negative working model about ourselves, which basically means I am not lovable, but a positive working model of others, we become very anxious in relationship. So this might sound like you are always trying to get their approval. You're always trying to please them because you feel like they are more important than you. They are not the problem, you are the problem. That is anxious. Third is dismissive, avoiding. You have a very positive working model of yourself, but a negative working model of the world. Basically means that I am very important, the others are not that important, and others cannot be trusted, so I might as well be very on my own. So avoidant people show this tendency where they avoid intimacy and commitment because they feel that others cannot be trusted because they are so special. Last is fearful avoidant, in which you have a negative model of yourself and negative model of the world. where you have both the mixed tendencies. You want to be close, but you cannot trust others. You feel unlovable, but again, you cannot trust others. So it is a mixture of all these. So you can understand what attachment style yours is based upon these. And however, I would like to add that it is a very old theory, and nowadays we're not focusing on attachment styles, but we're focusing on attachment dimension. So instead of putting people into headings or boxes of an attachment style, we're focusing on how anxious they are and how avoidant they are. Basically, there are two dimensions: attachment anxiety and avoidance, depending upon your need to be close and intimate to your partner. So you might not fit into the anxious attachment style, but you might be on the attachment anxiety spectrum. So this is a new theory which is developing. Okay, this is a case study. When Lily was little, she was raised by working parents. They hardly used to be at home, and Lily used to see them only during meals and before bedtime. Throughout her childhood, her parents were inconsistent and unpredictable in meeting her needs. There were times they were too available for her, and at times very absent. As a result, Lily acquired a notion that her needs are not important and that she's unworthy of their love and attention, that others are not reliable and cannot be trusted. She developed a negative working model for herself. Lily grew up to be a very anxious person in relationship. She viewed herself as unworthy of love and was very hypervigilant to the cues of unpredictability and inconsistency. She developed a fear of abandonment and rejection. She had difficulty trusting others, friends, or partners, showed very clingy behavior, became a people pleaser, and believed that people will leave her. The working model of herself is negative, which is basically my needs are not important. The core beliefs is basically the CBT model we work with. The core belief she would have acquired is I am unworthy, people will leave me. She might use compensatory strategies like overworking to prove her worth, overworking relationship to prove that I am worthy of your love, and people pleasing to please other people around her. Automatic negative thoughts are ants. Is I'm not doing enough. Why have I mentioned this? Is because whenever a client comes to us in therapy, we start the work from the bottom. So we'll start with automatic negative thoughts. This can also get manifested in distressing emotions, somatic complaints like headaches, and irrational thought patterns, anxiety. So the work starts from the very bottom. So whenever a client comes to us, they'll come with complaints of I'm feeling very anxious. Then we'll talk about what are your thoughts, and then we'll go up. And ultimately, we'll come to coordinating working models. So this is where therapy works. This is the cognitive behavioral model. And again, it goes back to your childhood as everything else. Stability of attachment depends upon your socioeconomic status and cultural variations, of course. There is a lot of factors where parents are not available to their children. A lot of people go through trauma. Trauma plays a very important role. People from a very low socioeconomic background, they have their own struggles. They're not that they're struggling to meet the basic needs of food and hunger only throughout their life. And cultural variations, for example, we have a collectivistic culture. So we are born to be very attached with people. But in American Western cultures, they are very high on insecure attachment because they have very unpredictable caregivers as infants because their nannies keep on changing. So they're not able to understand who should I trust. This is why cultural variation occurs. India is.
Do you have any data?
Yes, sir.
You have studies?
Yeah.
That Western people are like this, that variation are like that.
Yeah, sir. Actually, because I'm doing a research, I've read a lot of papers. So
you are saying that they are. You have data on that.
Yeah. There's a quantitative study done. A sample was taken, which was a mixed sample of Asian and Western countries to do a comparative study. So, in terms of insecure people, because health complaints and all of that are more in Western cultures also. So the data came out to be that they have more insecure attachment styles as compared to the study was based on why there increased divorce rates, why people separate there so much, all of that. So and one interesting point is India is now somewhere in between collectivistic and individualistic culture. So we're not able to understand where we are lying. That's why we're facing a lot of problems in attachment as well. Factors affecting attachment security, early availability of consistent caregiver, as I mentioned. Multiple attachment. Research also indicates that people who have siblings, their attachment is very different from people who are alone and single child. Quality of caregiving might be keep on changing depending upon parents' own trauma, their own shortcomings, health issues. Uh, for example, COVID happened. A lot of caregiving was different there because uh, people were struggling in the pandemic. Temperament and mother sensitivity. We all know temperament. What is temperament? So it is also found out that the temperament of a child has a very important role in attachment, because even though the parents want to cater the child's need, their temperament makes it difficult for them to be sensitive. There's a bidirectional relationship that exists there. Parents' internal working models, parents' own attachment styles plays a very important role, and cultural context, as I explained. Attachment style in psychiatry. So there's a paper I found, which is an attachment perspective psychology. So this paper review research findings showing that attachment insecurity is a major contributor to mental disorders, and an enhancement of attachment insecurity can facilitate emulation of psychopathology. Insecure attachment reduces resilience in coping with stressful life events and predisposes a person to break down psychologically at times of crisis. So basically, if you have an insecure attachment style, which is on a very high spectrum, you're already very vulnerable to stressful life events. It might act as a diagnosis for development of many psychological disorders. Attachment insecurity can therefore be viewed as a general vulnerability to mental disorders with particular symptomology depending upon genetic, developmental, and environmental factors. Attachment insecurity was common among people with mental disorders, ranging from mild distress to severe personality disorders and even schizophrenia. Both anxious and avoiding dimensions of attachment are associated with depression, clinically significant anxiety, OCD, PTSD, suicidal tendencies, and eating disorders. There's a lot of research on attachment styles and personality disorders. Even in therapeutic interventions with people with personality disorders, there's a lot of attachment work involved. Now you can ask me the question that when we read personality disorders, it feels like they have an insecure attachment style. And what's the difference between a normal person without the PD and a person with the PD? Is that the amount of distress and the impairment it causes them, and they might show some excessive behaviors like impulsivity and style tendency. You might have an insecure attachment style, but are still able to push through, and you might not act on those impulsive thoughts. But a person with personality disorders is not able to control them. So whenever somebody with personality disorders come to us as therapists, our first job is to understand the childhood, because the problem might lie in the attachment first. Yeah, anxious attachment style is associated with dependent, histrionic, and borderline disorders, whereas avoidant attachment is associated with schizoid and avoidant disorders. Attachment anxiety, as I mentioned, the spectrum is associated with emotional dysregulation, a component of personality disorders, while the avoidant attachment is associated with inhibitance component. Emotional dysregulation, impulsivity, clinging behavior, anxiety, too much stress with partners in relationship, jumping from one relationship, hyper dependency, and all of that are the emotional dysregulation, not able to soothe themselves. Inhibitance components is avoidance, emotional inability, not being able to empathize with their partners, and all of that. Insecure attachment is a predictor of the development of depression in children and adolescents. When treating depression in children, attachment should therefore be addressed. Insecure attachment style is higher in people with schizophrenia than in people without a mental illness, with fearful attachment style being the most prevalent in patients, followed by avoidant, then anxious and attachment styles. These are the findings from the core papers I found. Then why are we understanding attachment styles? Because it might help in an individual's treatment. It can be beneficial during therapeutic interventions. So for example, if somebody with depression or anxiety comes to you, knowing one's attachment style can actually help us understand family environment they might be exposed to. The stresses might be present, what stresses might be present, and what can cause relapse again. Understanding family dynamics, which can be beneficial in family counseling, to identify the kind of emotional support a patient might need, to identify potential stressors, precipitating and perpetuating factors. So, attachment insecurity or out of mental disorders. So if you know one's attachment style, it can actually help in a holistic treatment of a particular patient. And it's more, the work lies in more counseling and therapy because we have to understand the needs, child experiences, manifestation, and all of that. Now, lastly, I would like to add there's a huge research gap in understanding. We know what in relationships, but we don't know how people behave in relationships. So these behaviors are called protest behaviors, are not added it here. So people with insecure attachment styles usually engage in a lot of behaviors like protest behaviors, which basically are reassurance behaviors, attention seeking behaviors, all of that. So research has not been done on that. So I'm trying to do that. So that's what I'm communicating. That the behavioral manifestation of attachment styles is not being done. Is it there? The research is there, but in very different contexts, and especially on human context. So that's it. Lastly, there's a book called Attached. If you guys are interested in reading attachment styles more, it's a very easy read. It can actually help you with the patients and clients because it has worksheets. It has dialogues. You can help ask your patients. So you can definitely read it.
Can you just go Can you explain how attachment can be beneficial during addictions?
So sir, like for example, if you're able to provide therapy or counsel somebody who's going through addiction, substance abuse, so if you're able to understand where their stressor might be leading from their insecurity and attachment, so we're able to predict that as a stressor and we can work through it. So while working with their attachment simultaneously, we can work around what might be causing them to drink or engage in unhealthy.
Model for that, or is there a therapy based on attachment style?
So mostly, as I mentioned, the CBT model.
CBT is different. CBT is not based on attachment.
But we can use attachment theory there, no? Because you move upwards. The core beliefs are derived from your early experience.
It can be used for anything.
Yeah.
For relationships. Okay. You know, that we can use in for helping the patient.
There's one called schema therapy. That's an extension of cognitive model only, but that primarily works with it's an extension of CBT, but we usually work with patients with PD who have use schema therapy. REBT is also. Okay, thank you. These are the
questions? Okay. No. The topic was attachment theories.
attachment style.
When the experiment was baby boat, the one who was baked in Maya was given the bottle to feed the baby. But the baby is nice to you went to the cloth mother, not to the one with the wire. The concept of contact. So this theory did not go on the basic need of food, but it went on the basic need of
yeah, and as I mentioned somewhere, maternal sensitivity is what it talks contact. So people with difficult temperament seek a lot of mother's contact more. So as I mentioned, after the first year of existence, we move to other needs like comfort, love, attention. Just it is the attachment also the form. The attributes and habits as well, and empathized with the animals. He said that he also gives evidence wherein if an animal incorrectly identifies any other animal and this is later, right? This animal also interprets some other animal. Yes, he does not.
I have not seen on the topic. I have heard about it. Anybody else?
Please.
Yeah, I want to talk about this slide. See, whenever you are giving something, a presentation, please check the positive psychology.com. Okay.
Sir, I thought I'll tell that I've taken from positive psychology.
So you can
Reference
give,
are right.
give the reference. Okay. You can give the reference. For everything that you give, if you give a reference, then that is not plagiarism. You should tell that it is not my work and this from this perspective. Telling sources required. Otherwise, it is plagiarism. Also, we are recording it and we will be uploading it to YouTube. So anybody who finds his work there can do copyright it to them. That my be shared. So plagiarism and copyright is very important. So you can't just take something from somewhere and that is why I ask you source. The source every time you have to take small in the small box, which is like from there. So positivepsychology.com is the website. उसमें भी अलग-अलग articles. The articles. The website. There's no like people. There will be an author because the author, like positivepsychology.com has got it. The authors, so you have to name the author, the article, the year. Okay, there is a way in which you put reference for online material. Right?
I'll do that.
Yes, an answer. Anybody else? No? Let's start. We were only there.
Nice presentation. But what I would like to say, attachment theory is just a theory. As it is, if you see, adult and the relationship is also dependent on the child's temperament. And the same parent may not have the same attachment style to their child. So I think that is also an important part to see. Some traits are inborn, and that also kind of influences the attachment.
The same comment actually, I just repeating what Dr. Srini said, that in the mid 70s, 80s, there was a lot of rush on this parenting styles and psychopathy. And in fact, a lot of people were labeled like schizophrenic mother, old mother, and it was like everything depends upon parent. And if there is bad parenting, and then the child is damaged goods, that term comes a very long time. So, and at the adulthood, they have like daddy issues, whatever they, and then in the adulthood that also presents itself. Okay, but that theory is almost out of the way because a lot of research has been done, twin studies, immigration, etc., where environmental factors, change in environmental factors does not affect. For example, in twins, does not affect the outcome. Okay. They can have similar, can say, problems, although the parents are different. One twin, one living with one foster, another living with other foster parents. Still, they have similar outcomes. So, genetic also plays a part. Number one. Number two, whenever, like with the advent of this, we had psychodynamic psychotherapy. So, what is unstructured? So, you just sit with the client, you talk and you talk and you talk, and then you hope to attain a result. Okay, now this is more or less now we have directed through where we have set agenda, we identify the problem and solve. CBT is one of them, right? And for relationships, what is proven effective, lot of data on that. Interpersonal therapy is one where I wanted to answer. Interpersonal therapy is one where in the relationship you can identify problems and this attachment theory is a good way to, like, when psychiatry developed initially, a lot of theories came up to how to describe human behavior. So attachment theory was very popular for a lot of time. There is a lot of data, but you'll find that recently it has lost its like when many other things, expressed emotions also was one of those things. Okay. So if you find that in today's either diagnostic guidelines, anyone, the attachment theories are not there. In treatment guidelines also, there is no very best of my knowledge that is based on attachment. Okay. Personality disorder, TBT, dialectical behavior. Okay. But for research, it is a good thing because you always find new things. For example, you're right that now we are working on personality programs, not dividing people into categories. Rather, so somebody may have some anxious traits, some secure traits, maybe situational. Okay, very good presentation. You did well, but just for the good slides, your say presentation was very good, and about the material, you should put references. Okay, right, and your passion is there for some subject, but you have to be say as a therapist also, we need to be balanced. I may have my special interest in some areas. I may be biased. We need not be biased. There is something lacking in the attachment theory, so it will not be explained. All right. And for the training part, all the mental health caregivers should be very cautious and giving advice to the parents, especially parents with a psychiatric disorder, while evaluating about the parenting in the child. But it at times induces guilt in the parents. They may have given good parenting. So हमने तो बिल्कुल ठीक किया इसको बचपन से बहुत प्यार किया इसको नहीं. This what isn't good, and that induces a lot of guilt in parents who otherwise we have. So that is something that we should know, that attachment styles, the number of factors and said temperament of the child is also important. One statement, you said that biologically we are same. We are not same. People have different blood groups, different genes. All right. We have personality disorder, genetic, say, relationship that is there. So biologically also we are diverse. So same person in same environment. People with similar, say, genetic thing may have different outcomes. So that's all. Thank you.